Hello guys, this is Mr. Jimenez from Warren County Middle School. In this lesson, we are going to learn 3 properties of angles. Very important, okay? So, the first one, when you have a triangle, the sum of the 3 angles of the triangle every time equals 180 degrees. So, it doesn't matter what kind of triangle you have. Every time when you add the 3 angles of a triangle, you will have 180 degrees, okay? Now, the second property is 2 angles are complementary when they add up to 90 degrees, okay? So, if 2 angles add up to 90 degrees, they are called complementary angles, okay? Remember, complementary angles, 90 degrees. Now, the third property, when you have 2 angles and these 2 angles add up to 180 degrees, these angles are supplementary angles, okay? Again, supplementary angles are angles that add up to 180 degrees. So please remember these very important properties of angles for the next exercises. Okay, now we are gonna solve some exercises using these important properties. So let me explain what are we gonna do on these exercises. We need to find the measure of the unknown angle in each of the triangles, but in all of these exercises, we don't have the triangle. We need to understand, we need to read this information and understand this information in order to create the triangles, okay? So let me read the exercise 1. So we know that the measure of the angle 1 equals to 40 degrees and the measure of the angle 2 equals to 80 degrees. Now the question is, what is the measure of the angle 3? Okay, now let me show you the triangle for this exercise. It's something like this. So the angle number 1, the measure of the angle 1 is 40 degrees. And the angle number 2 is 80 degrees. And the question is, what is the angle number 3? So we don't know what is the measure of the angle number 3. But we remember very important properties about the angles. And remember, this is the first property. The sum of angles of a triangle equals 180 degrees. So when you add 3 angles of the triangle, you will have always 180 degrees, okay? So right here, if you add 40 degrees plus 80 degrees plus the measure of the angle number 3, you will have 180 degrees, okay? Now, what is 40 plus 80? Very good, 120. And now the question is, which number added to 120 equals 180? Okay, good job. This is 60 degrees. So the measure of the angle number 3 equals to 60 degrees. Okay, good job. Okay, now we are going to solve a different exercise, okay? But we continue using the 3 properties that we are learning in this lesson. So let me read the exercise here. If the complement of the angle number 1 is 80 degrees and the measure of angle number 2 is 80 degrees, what is the measure of the angle number 3? Again, we have a triangle. We don't have an idea how looks this triangle, but we know some very important information. The first one that we know is the angle number 1, the complement of the angle number 1 is 80 degrees. So we need to remember what does it mean. What does complementary mean, okay? So remember, look at the property number 2. Two angles are complementary when they add up to 90 degrees. Okay, remember, complementary, they add up to 90 degrees. So, in this exercise, we know that the angle number 1 plus 80 degrees, okay, will be 90 degrees again because they are complementary, okay? Now, what is the measure of the angle number 1? Which number added to 90, excuse me, which number added to 80 equals to 90? Very good, 10 degrees, okay? Now, what else do we know about this triangle? Okay, very good. We know the measure of the angle number 2. Okay, the measure of the angle number 2 is 80 degrees. And our question is, what is the measure of the angle number 3? So I'm gonna draw this triangle. Is not so easy to draw it, but this is like an idea of how looks the triangle, okay? This small angle right here is the angle number 1, and this is 10 degrees. The measure of the angle number 1, remember, is 10 degrees. Now this angle right here is the angle number 2, and the measure of this angle is 80 degrees. And now our question is, what is the measure of this angle, the angle number 3? Okay, now what do we know about the angles of a triangle? Okay, so let me show you again the first property of the angles. The sum of angles of a triangle equals to 180 degrees. Remember, if you add all of the three angles of a triangle, it will be always 180 degrees, okay? So go back here. If we write, let me write here, 10 degrees, the measure of the angle number 1, plus 80 degrees, the measure of the angle number 2, plus the measure of the angle number 3, this is the number that we don't know, it will be 180 degrees. Remember the property, okay? So if we add 10 plus 80, very good, this is 90. So 90 plus the measure of the angle number 3, it will be 180 degrees. So please, which number added to 90 degrees equals to 180 degrees? Very good, 90 degrees. So the measure of the angle number 3 is 90 degrees. Very good. Okay guys, so now we are gonna solve this exercise. This is a little bit harder, okay, than the other exercises, but it's easy. If you remember the properties, if you use these properties, I promise it will be easy. So let me read the exercise. We have this. If the supplement of the angle number 2 is 110 degrees and the complement of the angle number 3 is 60 degrees, what is the measure of the angle number 1? Okay, so we have two. In this exercise, we are going to solve to use the three properties, okay? Because we have supplementary angles, complementary angles, and the addition or the sum of the three angles on a triangle, okay? So please, let me show you again the three properties. So, excuse me. So, the properties of angles are this one. The first one, remember, the sum of the three angles of a triangle is 180 degrees. And two angles are complementary when they add up to 90 degrees. Remember, complementary, 90 degrees. Now, two angles are supplementary when they add up to 180 degrees. Okay, so remember, complementary, 90 degrees, supplementary, 180 degrees. So now, on the exercise, we have this. The supplement of the angle number 2 is 110 degrees. So let me write right here. If you have the measure of the angle number 2, the measure of the angle number 2 is not 110, because 110 is the supplement of the angle number 2. So that means that if you add the measure of the angle number 2 plus 110, you are going to have 180 degrees. Okay, remember, supplementary angles 190 degrees. Now, which number added to 110 equals to 180? Very good, 70 degrees, okay? So the measure of the angle number 2 is 70 degrees, because 70 plus 110 equals 180 degrees. Remember, supplementary angles 180 degrees. Now, the other part of the exercise. The complement of the angle number 3 is 60. Now we're going to talk about complementary angles, okay? So if the measure of the angle number 3 is not 60, because 60 is the complement of the angle number 3. So that means the measure of the angle 3 plus 60 equals to, remember, complementary angles, they add up to 90 degrees. Okay? Now, which number added to 60 equals to 90? Very good, 30 degrees. So now we know this. The measure of the angle number 2 equals 70, and the measure of the angle number 3 equals to 30. So let me draw right here the triangle. Okay, right here. I'm gonna write the measure of the angle number 2. This is 70 degrees. And now I'm gonna write the measure of the angle number 3. This is 30. And remember, if you add the 3 angles, you are going to have 180 degrees. Okay? So if you add the measure of the angle number 1 plus 70 degrees plus 30 degrees, you're going to have 180 degrees. Okay? Now, what is 70 plus 30? Very good, 100 degrees. So which number added to 100 degrees equals 180 degrees? Very good, 80 degrees. So the measure of the angle number 1 is 80 degrees. Okay, so as you can see, this is very easy because we are using the 3 properties that we are learning in this lesson. Thank you, guys.